Chapter 24. It happened, when Saul was returned from following the Philistines, that it was told him, saying, Behold, David is in the wilderness of En-gedi. Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men out of all Israel, and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. He came to the sheep pens by the way where there was a cave, and Saul went in to relieve himself. Now David and his men were abiding in the innermost parts of the cave. The men of David said to him, Behold, the day of which the Lord said to you, Behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as it shall seem good to you. Then David arose, and cut off the skirt of Saul's robe secretly. It happened afterward that David's heart struck him, because he had cut off Saul's skirt. He said to his men, The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed, to put forth my hand against him, seeing he is the Lord's anointed. So David checked his men with these words, and didn't allow them to rise against Saul. Saul rose up out of the cave and went on his way. David also arose afterward, and went out of the cave, and cried after Saul, saying, My Lord the king. When Saul looked behind him, David bowed with his face to the earth. David said to Saul, Why do you listen to men's words who say, Behold, David seeks your hurt? Behold, this day your eyes have seen how that the Lord had delivered you into my hand in the cave, and some told me to kill you, but my eyes spared you, and I said, I will not put forth my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, look, yes, see the skirt of your robe in my hand, for in that I cut off the skirt of your robe, and didn't kill you. Know you and see that there is neither evil nor disobedience in my hand, and I have not sinned against you, though you hunt after my life to take it. The Lord judge between me and you, and the Lord avenge me of you, but my hand shall not be on you. As says the proverb of the ancients, Out of the wicked comes forth wickedness, but my hand shall not be on you. After whom is the king of Israel come out? After whom do you pursue? After a dead dog? After a flea? The Lord therefore be judge, and give sentence between me and you, and see, and plead my cause, and deliver me out of your hand. It came to pass, when David had made an end of speaking these words to Saul, that Saul said, Is this your voice, my son David? Saul lifted up his voice and wept. He said to David, You are more righteous than I, for you have rendered to me good, whereas I have rendered to you evil. You have declared this day how that you have dealt well with me, because when the Lord had delivered me up into your hand, you didn't kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him go away unharmed? Therefore may the Lord reward you in good for that which you have done to me this day. Now behold, I know that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Swear now therefore to me by the Lord, that you will not cut off my seed after me, and that you will not destroy my name out of my father's house. David swore to Saul. Saul went home, but David and his men got them up to the stronghold. Chapter 25. Samuel died, and all Israel gathered themselves together and lamented him, and buried him in his house at Ramah. David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. There was a man in Maon whose possessions were in Carmel, and the man was very great, and he had about 3,000 sheep, and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail, and the woman was of a good understanding, and of a beautiful face. But the man was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep. David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, Go up to Carmel, and go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus shall you tell him who lives in prosperity, Peace be to you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. Now I have heard that you have shearers. Your shepherds have now been with us, and we did them no hurt, neither was there anything missing to them, all the while they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore let the young men find favor in your eyes, for we come in a good day. Please give whatever comes to your hand to your servants and to your son David." When David's young men came, they spoke to Nabal according to all those words in the name of David. Nabal answered David's servants and said, "Who is David, and who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays who break away from their masters. Shall I then take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers, and give it to men who I don't know where they come from?" So David's young men turned on their way and went back, and came and told him according to all these words. David said to his men, "Put on your sword." They girded every man his sword, and David also grabbed his sword, and there went up after David about 400 men, and 200 stayed with the baggage. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, "Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to greet our master, and he railed at them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt, neither missed we anything as long as we were with them, when we were in the fields. They were a wall to us both by night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore know and consider what you will do, for evil is determined against our master, and against all his house, for he is such a worthless fellow that one can't speak to him." Then Abigail made haste, and took 200 loaves, and 2 bottles of wine, and 5 sheep ready dressed, and 5 measures of parched grain, and 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on donkeys. She said to her young men, "Go on before me. Behold, I come after you." But she didn't tell her husband Nabal. It was so, as she rode on her donkey and came down by the covert of the mountain, that behold, David and his men came down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said, "Surely in vain have I kept all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained to him, and he has returned me evil for good. God do so to the enemies of David, and more also, if I leave of all that belongs to him by the morning light so much as one man-child." When Abigail saw David, she hurried and alighted from her donkey, and fell before David on her face, and bowed herself to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "On me, my lord, on me be the iniquity, and please let your handmaid speak in your ears. Hear the words of your handmaid. Please don't let my lord regard this worthless fellow, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your handmaid, didn't see the young men of my lord, whom you did send. Now therefore, my lord, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, seeing the Lord has withheld you from blood guiltiness, and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now therefore let your enemies, and those who seek evil to my lord, be as Nabal. Now this present which your servant has brought to my lord, let it be given to the young men who follow my lord. Please forgive the trespass of your handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my lord a sure house, because my lord fights the battles of the Lord, and evil shall not be found in you all your days. Though men be risen up to pursue you, and to seek your soul, yet the soul of my lord shall be bound in the bundle of life with the Lord your God, and the souls of your enemies, them he shall sling out, as from the hollow of a sling. It shall come to pass, when the Lord shall have done to my lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and shall have appointed you prince over Israel, that this shall be no grief to you, nor offense of heart to my lord, either that you have shed blood without cause, or that my lord has avenged himself. When the Lord shall have dealt well with my lord, then remember your handmaid." David said to Abigail, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me, and blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you that you have kept me this day from blood guiltiness, and from avenging myself with my own hand. For in very deed, as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, who has withheld me from hurting you, except you had hurried and come to meet me, surely there wouldn't have been left to Nabal by the morning light so much as one man-child." So David received of her that which he had brought him, and he said to her, "Go up in peace to your house. Behold, I have listened to your voice, and have accepted your person." Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunken. Therefore she told him nothing, less or more, until the morning light. It happened in the morning, when the wine was gone out of Nabal, that his wife told him these things, and his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. It happened about 10 days after, that the Lord struck Nabal so that he died. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed be the Lord, who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and has kept back his servant from evil, and the evil doing of Nabal has the Lord returned on his own head. David sent and spoke concerning Abigail, to take her to him as a wife. When the servants of David were come to Abigail to Carmel, they spoke to her, saying, David has sent us to you, to take you to him as a wife. She arose and bowed herself with her face to the earth, and said, Behold, your handmaid is a servant, to wash the feet of the servants of my lord. Abigail hurried and arose, and rode on a donkey, with 5 ladies of hers who followed her, and she went after the messengers of David, and became his wife. David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they became both of them his wives. Now Saul had given Michal his daughter, David's wife, to Palti the son of Laish, who was of Galim. Chapter 26. The Ziphites came to Saul to Gibeah, saying, Doesn't David hide himself in the hill of Hachilah, which is before the desert? Then Saul arose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, having 3,000 chosen men of Israel with him, to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul encamped in the hill of Hachilah, which is before the desert by the way. But David abode in the wilderness, and he saw that Saul came after him into the wilderness. David therefore sent out spies, and understood that Saul was come of a certainty. David arose and came to the place where Saul had encamped. And David saw the place where Saul lay, and Abner the son of Ner, the captain of his host. And Saul lay within the place of the wagons, and the people were encamped round about him. Then answered David and said to Ahimelech the Hittite, and to Abishai the son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab, saying, Who will go down with me to Saul to the camp? Abishai said, I will go down with you. So David and Abishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping within the places of the wagons, with his spear stuck in the ground at his head, and Abner and the people lay round about him. Then Abishai said to David, God has delivered up your enemy into your hand this day. Now therefore please let me strike him with the spear to the earth at one stroke, and I will not strike him the second time. David said to Abishai, Don't destroy him, for who can put forth his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? David said, As the Lord lives, the Lord will strike him, or his day shall come to die, or he shall go down into battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should put forth my hand against the Lord's anointed. But now please take the spear that is at his head, and the jar of water, and let us go. So David took the spear and the jar of water from Saul's head, and they got away, and no man saw it, nor knew it, neither did any awake, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord was fallen on them. Then David went over to the other side, and stood on the top of the mountain afar off, a great space being between them. And David cried to the people, and to Abner the son of Ner, saying, Don't you answer, Abner? Then Abner answered, Who are you who cries to the king? David said to Abner, Aren't you a valiant man? And who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not kept watch over your lord the king? For there came one of the people in to destroy the king your lord. This thing isn't good that you have done. As the Lord lives, you are worthy to die, because you have not kept watch over the king, the Lord's anointed. Now see where the king's spear is, and the jar of water that was at his head. Saul knew David's voice, and said, Is this your voice, my son David? David said, It is my voice, my lord, O king. He said, Why does my lord pursue after his servant? For what have I done, or what evil is in my hand? Now therefore please let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If it be the Lord has stirred you up against me, let him accept an offering. But if it be the children of men, cursed be they before the Lord, for they have driven me out this day, that I shouldn't cling to the Lord's inheritance, saying, Go serve other gods. Now therefore don't let my blood fall to the earth away from the presence of the Lord, for the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea, as when one does hunt a partridge in the mountains. Then Saul said, I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will no more do you harm, because my life was precious in your eyes this day. Behold, I have played the fool, and have erred exceedingly. David answered, Behold the spear, O king. Let then one of the young men come over and get it. The Lord will render to every man his righteousness and his faithfulness, because the Lord delivered you into my hand today, and I wouldn't put forth my hand against the Lord's anointed. Behold, as your life was much set by this day in my eyes, so let my life be much set by in the eyes of the Lord, and let him deliver me out of all oppression. Then Saul said to David, Blessed be you, my son David. You shall both do mightily, and shall surely prevail. So David went his way, and Saul returned to his place. Chapter 27. David said in his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should escape into the land of the Philistines, and Saul will despair of me, to seek me any more in all the borders of Israel, so I shall escape out of his hand. David arose and passed over, he and the 600 men who were with him, to Achish the son of Maoch, king of Gath. David lived with Achish at Gath, he and his men, every man with his household, even David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the Carmelitess, Nabal's wife. It was told Saul that David was fled to Gath, and he sought no more again for him. David said to Achish, If I have now found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in one of the cities of the country, that I may dwell there, for why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you? Then Achish gave him Ziklag that day. Why, Ziklag pertains to the kings of Judah to this day. The number of the days that David lived in the country of the Philistines was a full year and 4 months. David and his men went up, and made a raid on the Geshurites and the Girzites and the Amalekites, for those nations were the inhabitants of the land who were of old, as you go to Shur, even to the land of Egypt. David struck the land, and saved neither man nor woman alive, and took away the sheep, and the oxen, and the donkeys, and the camels, and the clothing, and he returned and came to Achish. Achish said, Against whom have you made a raid today? David said, Against the south of Judah, and against the south of the Jerahmeelites, and against the south of the Kenites. David saved neither man nor woman alive to bring them to Gath, saying, Lest they should tell of us, saying, So did David, and so has his manner been all the while he has lived in the country of the Philistines. Achish believed David, saying, He has made his people Israel to utterly hate him. Therefore he shall be my servant forever. Chapter 28. It happened in those days that the Philistines gathered their host together for warfare, to fight with Israel. Achish said to David, Know assuredly that you shall go out with me in the host, you and your men. David said to Achish, Therefore you shall know what your servant will do. Achish said to David, Therefore I will make you keeper of my head forever. Now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had lamented him and buried him in Ramah, even in his own city. Saul had put away those who had familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. The Philistines gathered themselves together, and came and encamped in Shunem. And Saul gathered all Israel together, and they encamped in Gilboa. When Saul saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. When Saul inquired of the Lord didn't answer him, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by prophets. Then Saul said to his servants, Seek me a woman who has a familiar spirit, that I may go to her, and inquire of her. His servants said to him, Behold, there is a woman who has a familiar spirit at Endor. Saul disguised himself, and put on other clothing, and went, he and 2 men with him, and they came to the woman by night, and he said, Please divine to me by the familiar spirit, and bring up whoever I shall name to you. The woman said to him, Behold, you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off those who have familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. Why then are you laying a snare for my life to cause me to die?" Saul swore to her by the Lord, saying, "As the Lord lives, there shall no punishment happen to you for this thing." Then the woman said, "Whom shall I bring up to you?" He said, "Bring me up Samuel." When the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice, and the woman spoke to Saul, saying, "Why have you deceived me? For you are Saul." The king said to her, "Don't be afraid, for what do you see?" The woman said to Saul, "I see a god coming up out of the earth." He said to her, "What form is he?" She said, "An old man comes up, and he is covered with a robe." Saul perceived that it was Samuel, and he bowed with his face to the ground. Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me to bring me up?" Saul answered, "I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God has departed from me, and answers me no more, neither by prophets, nor by dreams. Therefore I have called you, that you may make known to me what I shall do." Samuel said, "Why then do you ask of me, seeing the Lord is departed from you, and is become your adversary? The Lord has done to you as he spoke by me, and the Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hand, and given it to your neighbor, even to David, because you didn't obey the voice of the Lord, and didn't execute his fierce wrath on Amalek. Therefore the Lord has done this thing to you this day. Moreover, the Lord will deliver Israel also with you into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow shall you and your sons be with me. The Lord will deliver the host of Israel into the hand of the Philistines." Then Saul fell immediately his full length on the earth, and was very afraid because of the word of Samuel, and there was no strength in him, for he had eaten no bread all the day, nor all the night. The woman came to Saul, and saw that he was very troubled, and said to him, "Behold, your handmaid has listened to your voice, and I have put my life in my hand, and I have listened to the words which you spoke to me. Now therefore please listen also to the voice of your handmaid, and let me set a morsel of bread before you and eat, that you may have strength when you go on your way." But he refused and said, "I will not eat." But his servants, together with the woman, constrained him, and he listened to their voice. So he arose from the earth and sat on the bed. The woman had a fattened calf in the house, and she hurried and killed it, and she took flour and kneaded it, and did bake unleavened bread of it, and she brought it before Saul and before his servants, and they ate. Then they rose up and went away that night.
Then, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, who had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. So they made him a supper there. Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Mary therefore took a pound of ointment of pure nard, very precious, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the ointment. Then Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, one of his disciples who would betray him, said, "Why wasn't this ointment sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" Now he said this, not because he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief, and having the money box used to steal what was put in it. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial. For you always have the poor with you, but you don't always have me." A large crowd, therefore, of the Jews learned that he was there, and they came, not for Jesus' sake only, but that they might see Lazarus also, whom he had raised from the dead. But the chief priests conspired to put Lazarus to death also, because on account of him many of the Jews went away and believed in Jesus. On the next day a great multitude had come to the feast. When they heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, they took the branches of the palm trees, and went out to meet him, and cried out, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel." Jesus, having found a young donkey, sat on it, as it is written, "Don't be afraid, daughter of Zion. Behold, your king comes, sitting on a donkey's colt." His disciples didn't understand these things at first, but when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things were written about him, and that they had done these things to him. The multitude therefore that was with him when he called Lazarus out of the tomb, and raised him from the dead, was testifying about it. For this cause also the multitude went and met him, because they had heard that he had done this sign. The Pharisees therefore said among themselves, "See how you accomplish nothing? Behold, the world has gone after him." Now there were certain Greeks among those that went up to worship at the feast. These therefore came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida of Galilee, and asked him, saying, "Sir, we want to see Jesus." Philip came and told Andrew in turn. Andrew came with Philip, and they told Jesus. Jesus answered them, "The time has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Most assuredly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains by itself alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. He who loves his life will lose it. He who hates his life in this world will keep it to eternal life. If anyone serves me, let him follow me. Where I am, there will my servant also be. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. Now my soul is troubled. What shall I say? Father, save me from this time? But for this cause I came to this time. Father, glorify your name." Then there came a voice out of the sky, saying, "I have both glorified it and will glorify it again." The multitude therefore who stood by and heard it said that it had thundered. Others said, "An angel has spoken to him." Jesus answered, "This voice hasn't come for my sake, but for your sakes. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the prince of this world will be cast out. And I, if I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." But he said this, signifying by what kind of death he should die. The multitude answered him, "We have heard out of the law that the Christ remains forever. How do you say, the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is this Son of Man?" Jesus therefore said to them, "Yet a little while the light is with you. Walk while you have the light, that darkness doesn't overtake you. He who walks in the darkness doesn't know where he is going. While you have the light, believe in the light, that you may become sons of light." Jesus said these things, and he departed and hid himself from them. But though he had done so many signs before them, yet they didn't believe in him, that the word of Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled, which he spoke. "Lord, who has believed our report? To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed?" For this cause they couldn't believe, for Isaiah said again, "He has blinded their eyes, and he hardened their heart, lest they should see with their eyes, and perceive with their heart, and would turn, and I would heal them." Isaiah said these things when he saw his glory, and spoke of him. Nevertheless, even of the rulers many believed in him, but because of the Pharisees they didn't confess it, so that they wouldn't be put out of the synagogue, for they loved men's praise more than God's praise. Jesus cried out and said, "Whoever believes in me believes not in me, but in him who sent me. He who sees me sees him who sent me. I have come as a light into the world, that whoever believes in me may not remain in the darkness. If anyone listens to my sayings and doesn't believe, I don't judge him. For I came not to judge the world, but to save the world. He who rejects me and doesn't receive my sayings has one who judges him. The word that I spoke, the same will judge him in the last day. For I spoke not from myself, but the Father who sent me, he gave me a commandment, what I should say and what I should speak. I know that his commandment is eternal life. The things therefore which I speak, even as the Father has said to me, so I speak."
Psalm 116. I love Yahweh because he listens to my voice and my cries for mercy. Because he has turned his ear to me, therefore I will call on him as long as I live. The cords of death surrounded me, the pains of Sheol got a hold of me. I found trouble and sorrow. Then I called on the name of Yahweh. Yahweh, I beg you, deliver my soul. Gracious is Yahweh and righteous. Yes, our God is merciful. Yahweh preserves the simple. I was brought low, and he saved me. Return to your rest, my soul, for Yahweh has dealt bountifully with you. For you have delivered my soul from death, my eyes from tears, and my feet from falling. I will walk before Yahweh in the land of the living. I believed, therefore I said, I was greatly afflicted. I said in my haste, all men are liars. What will I give to Yahweh for all his benefits toward me? I will take the cup of salvation and call on the name of Yahweh. I will pay my vows to Yahweh, yes, in the presence of all his people.
Precious in the sight of Yahweh is the death of his saints. Yahweh, truly I am your servant. I am your servant, the son of your handmaid. You have freed me from my chains. I will offer to you the sacrifice of thanksgiving, and will call on the name of Yahweh. I will pay my vows to Yahweh, yes, in the presence of all his people. In the courts of Yahweh's house, in the midst of you, Jerusalem, praise Yah. Psalm 117. Praise Yahweh, all you nations. Extol him, all you peoples. For his loving kindness is great toward us. Yahweh's faithfulness endures forever. Praise Yah.
A wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish man despises his mother. Folly is joy to one who is void of wisdom, but a man of understanding keeps his way straight. Where there is no counsel, plans fail, but in a multitude of counselors they are established. Joy comes to a man with the reply of his mouth. How good is a word at the right time!